News made news this week. Around 4:45 Monday afternoon, the staff of the Washington Post was called to a meeting. Donald Graham, whose family has owned the paper since 1933, stood before his battered journalists who have endured years of pay cuts, staff cuts, and plunges in circulation. He announced he was selling the paper, but it was who he was selling to that has many people asking what's next for the media world.
Since the birth of the internet, newspapers have struggled to keep a pace of the digital revolution. During its peak, the Washington Post uncovered the Watergate scandal, which brought down Richard Nixon. But in recent years, the Post suffered severe revenue losses, and after 80 years of ownership, the Graham family sold their ink-stained burden. The old black and white has been replaced, and no one knows that better than Amazon founder Jeff Bezos.
I think to a lot of people like myself, this is just shocking news. Enormous amount of sentiment and emotion for the family.
Bezos made headlines, purchasing the paper for a mere $250 million. Bezos, hailed by many as technology visionary, called his acquisition a personal endeavor and reassured employees and readers that he will preserve its journalistic tradition while driving innovation.
Of optimism that he'll be able to take newspapers and journalism onto the next higher plane in the internet age.
The 135-year-old paper has seen hard times before. But Bezos hopes to rekindle the vigor and journalistic enthusiasm the Post is most well known for.
Wow, another newspaper we're talking about here. I wanted to give you a quote here. Katharine Graham, who guided the paper through the Watergate scandal, has said in the past, in order to be a great newspaper, you have to be profitable. And let's face fact, the newspaper was not profitable, losing $50 million in the last quarter. And so here we go. We're seeing the sale of another huge icon in the newspaper business. What do you think about all this? Dee Dee, you're obviously been in the media industry for a long time. Are you heartbroken to see this, or no?
Don't care.
Don't care?
Well, I don't read newspapers. I don't like newspapers. I like looking at everything online. Picking up the newspaper and it's all cumbersome and difficult and you get stuff on your fingers. I mean, I just do not like newspapers, so I think they're all going away anyway.
Where do you get your news now? Just everything online? Everything?
Everything online. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bart, what about you? Now, I know there's a little bit of a psychology here in terms of, depending upon the age of the person, how you feel about this also.
Well, I like getting the newspaper and opening it up, and I don't mind that my fingers get a little dirty. I kind of like that ritual, but I have to say, on my iPad, I look at and I read articles on from Politico or Huffington Post or the Wall Street Journal, and I like to read those articles. And so I feel that maybe this is a nice move so that there can still be a newspaper, and there's also a way to maybe enhance this newspaper so it goes online and it can become more profitable.
Well, I mean, it's one of the greatest newspapers in the country. They just broke the Snowden case not too long ago, a couple months ago. But if we do look in the past 2 years, circulation went from 850,000 to 475,000, and staff has been cut from 1,000 to 640. So we got to, when you look at this, do you fear that the quality of journalism could suffer as we move forward? And I think that's the big question that a lot of people have as we go from print to online.
See, I don't see it that way because I read the Washington Post online. You still have the reporters. It's just a different medium now. It's just changing. It's sort of like, cassettes or 8-tracks going to, I mean, I just think it's a dinosaur now, and I think they're going away for a reason. And it's better to be more efficient. Doesn't mean you don't still have the reporters. You just don't put it on this, you put it online.
Yeah. And I think that if it has to be the wave of the future. I mean, Dee Dee has to be right about this. I mean, it's got to be where we're going.
Well, environmentally, a lot of people like it, but let's talk about the psychology of a person going online. And I'm talking about some of the older people, like my parents, that certainly do not want to go and lose their newspapers. What do you tell somebody? Embrace it? Embrace the change?
Well, maybe the change can be a modification where you still can get a newspaper, but maybe as we go forward, a lot more people over time are going to be looking at the newspaper like Dee Dee does, and they read it online. But I also think that this presents an opportunity where maybe you could wake up in the morning and on your iPad you could have those particular articles, like maybe the sports could just hit you. Since you're a baseball fan, you would get all the scores as soon as you wake up in the morning. So maybe there's ways to enhance this paper.
Well, I got another question about the owner himself. Now, this paper was losing $50 million. So why did he buy it? That's, I think, what a lot of people are waiting to see. Obviously, he's been called the man who redefined online retailing and the beacon of the internet age. It's going to be interesting to see how he invests in this paper.
Well, look, how famous he'll be if he's able to make something work creatively. Someone like that who's been so successful, I think they look for challenges. And, we'll see what he does with it. It'll be fascinating. And, he's a creative guy, super smart, and has been so successful. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it is going to be fun to watch. I agree with you on that.
I think it's a good thing, and I think it's going to be great to watch. And I'm sure he has some very specific strategies on how he's going to make this go. So that's going to be something that we're going to see, and we're going to take a look at
Well,
that.
any business that was losing $50 million,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And certainly as a journalist, I'm eager to see what he's going to be doing also. What about some of the, these larger newspapers that are being pushed aside? Are we seeing more, I guess, more of an opportunity for the smaller newspapers?
Actually, I think smaller newspapers will always do well in small towns. Being from a small town, people do not give up their small town newspapers, that's for sure. I mean, they're not going to go, it's just not the big enough operation to go online. I mean, you kind of do it, but not really. So I think that's a good point. I think some of the smaller newspapers will perhaps do better because of this.
So local will survive.
I think so.
I think so too.
All newspapers are local.
It's going to be the role of the newspaper. Which role and which newspaper is going to work.
Well, of course, the next question that I have, and none of us really know for sure, but could the New York Times be next? Of course, that's another pillar of the national media establishment. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that the Washington Post would go this route. Right. But after, Newsweek went the beginning of the year, so, now the big question is the New York Times next?
I hope so. No, I'm teasing. I'm not a big fan of the Times, or the Post, actually. But still, I just think it's the new wave, and it's going to be less. I mean, who knows? Maybe newspapers will go every other day. Maybe they'll go once a week. Who knows what happens?
I think the answer is yes,
things have to
right?
change. Things have to change. They are.
Yeah. It has to be yes.
Well, what about, all right, social media? A lot of people are turning to Twitter for their news and things like that, but, there's still that accuracy. And, my question as a journalist is how can you determine that accuracy when you're online?
Well, but that's a good point, Mia, because if it's accurate, it's so old by the time you get a newspaper that it's probably not even accurate anymore. And that's what I don't like either, because it's so slow.
Well, it depends upon the story. Investigative journalism, a big story like Snowden, you can put a story like that certainly into a newspaper.
And maybe that's what newspapers will go more towards, more like a journal or something where it's those types of stories that survive. But you can still read those online.
But in terms of actually being able to determine accuracy, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, and then I'm interjecting my opinion there. But
well, it's a challenge right now on the internet because there's so much out there that's not true. I mean, there are facts everywhere, and you can catch them later, and that whoever said it just either fabricated it or just tried to make something or put a little twist on it.
We could keep going on this subject too. It's fascinating, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. And we'll use the word fascinating again to say it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much. And thank you for watching, everyone. That's all we have time for this week. We hope you enjoy another great summer week. Thanks for spending your time with us here at Fresh Outlook. I'm Mia Toschi. See you again next week.